2016 was a pretty annoying year for a lot of reasons, but aside from all the negatives, there were quite a few positives during 2016, such as the amazing level of animation we received this year. So I decided to create this video highlighting some of the best cartoons and animated films I watched. I'll be breaking this video down into 3 main sections. The first will be focusing on continuing shows that existed before 2016, as I'll only be talking about what they offered in terms of episodes that year, which will be followed by brand new Western shows and animated films. Then Eastern cartoons, basically anime and anime films. With all that being said, let's actually get into my highlights. Although only one episode of Gravity Falls aired in 2016, it was the final episode and conclusion to the whole series as a 44-minute special. And boy, did the series go out with a bang. Actually, that's all I'm really gonna say. Gravity Falls was epic from start to finish, and if you're yet to watch it, please do. It's a cartoon with a lot of laughs, heart, and mystery. Season 2 kicks off right after the events of Season 1. No spoilers, of course. As the show spends more time expanding on the history and lore of Star's family, which was particularly interesting considering what is being hinted at. We also follow another, let's say, perspective which was really cool to actually see as it gave the series more weight. The series has become stronger in other aspects like the writing, but the only downside to Star's second season is the lack of background music and music in general. I don't know why it's absent in some episodes because it creates an empty atmosphere to a series that's usually colourful and cheerful. You know, I feel like I'm one of the only people who watches this show, and it sucks that it's not getting another season because it's a really underrated cartoon, but I will say it's not for everyone. Season 2 delivers more adventures of Harvey and friends just living life as carefree kids. Other than the animation getting slightly better, the series does find its flow as a much more relaxed and humorous show. It's why I love it. Compared to other shows I watch that are fast-paced and somewhat stressful to actually watch, it's really nice to just take a break with this series. Much like Harvey Beaks, Season 2 of We Bare Bears is more of the same, following Grizz, Panda, and Ice Bear living in the city. But the people behind the show are pretty creative in coming up with simple concepts for episodes that over the course of 11 minutes turn into a pretty funny series of wacky hijinks. The show did some original stuff like expanding more on the bear's history, which got quite emotional. We have more returning and new characters that are always welcome. Plus, there was even a 2-parter episode. This series is so consistently good, I can't wait for more. I'm just gonna say it. Season 2 of Steven Universe was an inconsistent mess clouded with too many filler episodes and I really didn't enjoy it. But Season 3 returns to form as it resolves all the weak plot points from the previous season to focus on a more engaging story and develop its existing characters further. Along with being one of the more progressive cartoons for kids right now, I'm happy with the direction Season 4 is heading towards as it looks like it's going to get bigger and better. What can I say about JoJo other than it's amazing? No, but in all seriousness, Part 4 was really good as it had a similar feel to Part 3, which was like a quest, but this series is more of a mystery adventure in a small town, which gave this series more interest. All the characters and their powers are wonderfully designed as this whole part oozes originality and style. Animation was a little sketchy at times, but it was there when it really mattered. Thoroughly enjoyed it, hopefully Part 5 isn't too far off. I talked about this cartoon on my most recent first impressions video, and if you've already watched it, you'll know that I adore this series. It's got the right mixture of comedy and adventure with a dark theme. I mean, it's a show about a vampire rabbit who drinks vegetable juice with his fangs. The characters and animation as well as the style are overall pretty good. It's a real blast to watch. Now, regarding the video I actually did on Bunnicular, I had to cut this point of view for time reasons, but I'll share it here. Episodes of Bunnicular have kind of just stopped airing altogether, especially in Western countries like mine. So naturally I'm thinking, oh, it's on hiatus, it'll be back soon. Which is sort of the case, but I look online and see people have uploaded clips of whole episodes and, well, unaired episodes. I know this because people outside of America enjoy the show enough to do so, which is probably the reason why it's getting a second season. Boomerang or Cartoon Network, whoever's in charge, just show the episodes in America so I can see them. The promos for new episodes look really good and I hope its audience grows this year. This cartoon reminds me so much of the Peanuts comic strips. Not because of its philosophical themes, but more its art style, as the Loud House looks fairly close to an animated comic strip with its flat backgrounds, rough sketch-like lines for small details like shadows. Characters look very cartoony and hand-drawn. The color scheme never uses bright colors in order to look like paper. Wait, why am I trying to convince you? Just look at the title cards for each episode. It's clearly inspired by classic comics and that's fine. The Loud House is a slice-of-life comedy that follows the life of Lincoln Loud, who is the middle child in a family of 10 sisters, as he tries to survive living in a house with 10 sisters. Like, what the hell? Their parents had a child every 2 years consecutively for over 20 years. That is, if I've done my maths right. Like, wow, did they take this slogan too literally? Jokes aside, this cartoon is pretty good from its great animation, varied voice cast, and characters that appear to be one-noted. I mean, there is a smart one and a dumb one. But even those characters are unique in terms of their personalities, as some of the other sisters have less generic personalities, like this one wants to be a comedian, and this one specifically wants to be an English rock star. The cartoon has a lot of originality, and I give it props for focusing on family and sibling rivalry, as I'm sure it's relatable to anyone who has a brother or sister. I have no idea why they decided to remake Voltron, but I'm glad they did because it turned out pretty good for a first season. I'll say this now. The first episode isn't great, but it's the setup, so you need to watch it in order to continue the series, as after episode 1, it's smooth throughout. The animation is a blend of traditional 2D animation with a slight anime influence. It's from the same team that worked on The Legend of Korra after all. Although there is CGI for the robots and action scenes, I personally didn't find it distracting, which I usually do in other cartoons because it's unnecessary. But here I think it works because Voltron is colourful and stands out due to its size, so the CGI doesn't look as weird because it's a weird thing in a somewhat believable setting. Plus it's mostly in space over a purpley black background, so that helps. Animation is fluid, whether 2D or 3D, but the story and the characters are what really carries the show. The series follows 5 unlikely heroes as they become the pilots of 5 lion robots that transform to create Voltron, an ultimate power in order to stop the evil empire from taking over the galaxy. I think you get the idea. The core plot is nothing special, but it's the adventures they have over the course of the season that makes things interesting. These side quests are well written, but when the main story gets involved, it's paced nicely to give you enough to stay interested. The characters are enjoyable as they have their own goals on top of working together as a team. Each character has enough time for development as there's moments where they just talk. There are so many other details worth mentioning, like how the robot lions actually have a bit of a personality, but that could be saved for another time and video. Based on the books by Guillermo del Toro of the same name comes the animated series of Trollhunters, which I was pleasantly surprised by. It's an adventure fantasy about a human who becomes the Trollhunter, a hero entrusted with great power to protect both his world and the secret troll world below, with the help of friends of course. Its story takes a lot of twists and turns that thickens the plot nicely, as for a 26 episode season it's paced rather well. As characters develop and relationships strengthen, it does feel like progression is being made, so to speak. For a DreamWorks TV series, it looks good, but it lacks the polish of some of their prettier films. But there is good attention to detail that makes up for it, like the lighting in some areas and the shine on the Trollhunter's armor. The characters are actually really likable and clever, even this character, Toby. Just from looks you think he's going to be the comic relief who's always making jokes about how hungry he is. He nor any of the other characters are annoying. They're all well written and once again likable. You can't cheer for heroes if they piss you off after all. Plus the voice acting from a few notable people complements the characters. Everything has a cool design, mainly the trolls, as they have this great mixture of monster and demon to their look. Particularly the villains who look extra evil. There are a lot of smart and funny concepts that I'm not going to spoil, which made the series that much more interesting. I'm really glad I gave this one my time. I pretty much said everything I wanted to say in my quick review and my opinion still stands. Since watching it twice in the cinemas, yes, I liked it that much, I've brought a copy of it on Blu-ray and watched all the special features, seeing how much time they put into crafting a world where animals of all sizes that are accurate to scale can coexist, and the many changes they made to the story. Zootopia was going to be a much darker and maybe more depressing film, but I'm happy with what we got. Zootopia as of this recording was my favourite film of 2016, as everything from the characters to the story and its underlining messages were all delivered very well in a story about talking animals. It's not the best of the three, but I still liked it and I know a lot of others will. Fu Panda 3 focuses more on family and relationship with those you're close to. It was a nice slower change of pace for a series, even if there's less fighting and a film with Kung Fu in the title. DreamWorks really stepped up the animation on this one, as movements are much sharper, a little more detail has been given to the character's fur, and a lot of the backgrounds look amazing at times. Don't expect a memorable villain, and the story is just fine. It's a good film that has a perfect ending to the franchise. Oh wait, they're making more films? Okay, sure. This film is not as good as people say it is. It's a little overhyped now looking at its reputation, but I think it's great. The film succeeds in the animation and character design because it's Disney, it's what they're known for. But what I loved about this film was the characters, as they stood out the most for me. The chemistry together worked so well thanks to the writing and the voice acting. Actually, thinking back, it's the only thing that made this film work for me. The story is enjoyable and gets epic towards the end, although I think this film will be remembered more for its music than character development. The songs are catchy and interesting enough, I find, that I'm okay with it being the selling point to some. It's worth a watch, but don't expect to be blown away. It sucks that hardly anyone saw this film because it's pretty good. You only have to look at it to know that. Even for a stop motion film that takes hours of painstaking work just to make a few seconds of movement natural, the studio still has time to push the envelope and create amazing concepts like this. Seriously, this is crazy, and in the film it looks awesome. Obviously you can see the animation is masterful, but everything else holds up well. The design of the characters and world are all fitting in a Japanese-like setting, and mentioning the characters, they're great. Some are better than others, but they all have some kind of weight to them. The story delivers in its adventure fantasy theme, but there could have been a bit more in terms of a grander quest happening in this film. I love this film to bits. I just hope that when Lakia's next film comes out, more people will see it. I was beginning to lose all interest in the superhero genre, particularly due to Marvel's films becoming rather safe and generic, as well as DC's films just being, well, shit. But along comes My Hero Academia, an anime that adds a refreshing and interesting take on superheroes. The series takes place in a world where almost everyone has a superpower, which are called quirks, and those who don't are known as quirkless. From this setup, we follow a group of kids as they enroll in a high school specifically to train in order to become a hero. If I don't say it now, someone else will. Yeah, it's fairly similar to the 2005 Disney film Sky High, but My Hero Academia actually does something with the concept of school for superheroes. I mean, you do have your typical anime tropes like the main character being the weak underdog who's special in some way, the likable yet unlikable hothead rival, and of course the sweet love interest for the main character. But with the combination of most characters' varied personalities, unique quirks, and oh my gosh, amazingly designed superhero costumes. I mean, look at how cool some of these are. They're so creative yet keep the style of hero costumes from the past. Yeah, as I was saying, all these elements together make the standards in the storytelling more interesting. And the story so far is pretty good. Animation is consistent and the voice acting is solid. The only thing that sucked was the main villain in this season. They look badass, but their evil plan, so to speak, was so weak for someone who's meant to be so smart. I'm sorry, I couldn't take them seriously. They were just laughable. But I have heard that things get better. But other than that, I love this season and I'm definitely going to be reading the manga and watching the anime when it returns. Well, this was a nice surprise. Before watching Re:Zero, the only thing I knew about it was that people were arguing about who was the best girl. And I'm not gonna lie, all the drama and jokes I saw surrounding this anime made me curious enough to give it a shot, and I'm glad I did. I can't really talk about the whole series without spoiling most of it, so I'll say it's about an otaku. Our main character who randomly finds himself in a fantasy world and decides to make the most of the situation by helping out as best as he can characters he just so happens to meet. It sounds simple, but the story delivers in pretty good writing that actually handles emotion and character developments in a way that still progresses the plot forward. Its pacing moves at just the right speed in order for you to be able to understand everything this world has to offer. But like I said, it's a fantasy, so there's demons, beastmen, and magic being thrown into the mix. But the lore is original enough to feel lived in. The characters are all memorable for their wild and weird personalities. Strong designs with clothing that helps them stand out more, as each character has a good colour scheme to their look. Now, although I said the main character was an otaku, which isn't the greatest achievement in life, kids, he doesn't take himself that seriously and becomes a more interesting character as the season goes on. He delivers terrible one-liners knowing they're terrible, and makes comments about what he thinks is going to happen next in the story based on the amount of games he's played and animes I'm sure he's watched. If this sounds awful to you, don't worry, it's not consistent and it stops fairly quickly. The voice acting is great as far as I can tell, and the animation is good. It steps up when there's action, but overall it's a bright and colourful series. The only thing that bothered me was the CGI animation on characters in the background. It was really unnecessary and became distracting. Re:Zero is a great watch that I think anyone can enjoy. Once again, glad I gave this one a shot. You know, I don't think I'm the intended target audience for this series, but I really enjoyed it. Yuri on Ice is basically about our main character, Yuri, a Japanese figure skater who manages to catch the attention of his skating hero Victor, as he decides to coach Yuri in order to boost his career and ultimately win the Grand Prix finals. This series goes into almost every aspect of competitive ice skating, and although it's taken very seriously, there is a comedic tone to it as it's very light-hearted most of the time. It's paced well and even gets a bit tense if you fully invest yourself into how the story plays out. A lot of the characters are very sweet and likable. Yuri is particularly adorable at times as they sometimes animate him to look more cutesy. There is a lot of chemistry between characters like Victor and Yuri. It really develops their relationship, which builds up to some nice emotional moments towards the end. And yeah, there is a lot of sexual energy in this series as Victor is a bit of a flirt, but certain ideas are left ambiguous. There is a great deal of stamina to the animation, mainly with the scenes when they perform on ice, as they were able to nail the flow and presentation of movement on it. I mean, they really must have studied every aspect that goes into how a said move is performed, or they just had figure skaters perform the exact routines they had in mind and copied their actions. However they did it, it's impressive. I know this is probably one just for the girls, but for a sports anime it's pretty good. I freaking love the concepts in this series. Kisnaivas follows a small group of high school kids that are chosen to be part of an experiment that ends up linking them together via any pain they might receive. So if one person gets hurt, they all feel the same pain. The series' main focus is on the characters. You know the exact kind of person they're going to be just from looks. Although I think the designs are pretty cool in helping them stand out more as each one has a different hair color from the last and overall style in terms of fashion, they really made sure to have every character look bright, colorful and unique in terms of aesthetic without them going overboard. For example, this character's look is just the right amount of quirkiness in regards to cute girly things. This series takes advantage of the fact that the characters need to work together in order to progress with the experiment. So you get quite a good chunk of relationship building and character development, which makes the characters much more interesting to learn about. Throw in some emotions that get quite sad, a little bit of comedy, and the clever use of a love triangle makes for an interesting story. The animation is pretty good as backgrounds have a somewhat realistic look to them. The characters could have had a bit more movement to their actions though, but a lot of dynamic lighting makes up for that. I like a lot of the weird ideas in this series, like the mascot characters being a part of the secret experiment. Even though I don't think the story was executed that well, it has enough creativity within it to balance out its shortcomings. Let's just get this out the way. Mob Psycho 100 is amazing in almost every way. It's my favorite anime of 2016. Simply put, it follows Mob, who is a very powerful sidekick that has trouble controlling his powers as they seem to be linked to his emotions, so he suppresses them. But as he keeps getting involved in all kinds of challenges, his true colors end up showing. The series has a really unique art style. Everything has this hand-drawn, loose and messy look to it that looks awesome to me. Then the animation goes one step further by changing up the animation for comedic effects, mainly with reaction faces, like adding tons of details to very quick shots of characters. They're extremely over the top but funny as hell. There is like a psychedelic influence with the special effects, and the fight scenes or action gets pretty epic. The characters are extremely likable, even Mob, a not so bright kid who doesn't show emotions. He actually has depth to him, and chemistry between him and more colourful characters make for interesting pairings. There is kind of a twist in the series which really develops particular characters. I mean, everyone is enjoyable, even those with very little screen time. It's a surprisingly well-written series with some relatable themes about wanting to be normal, girls, and being popular in school, as well as other deeper meanings. I mean, I really did like the story as well, but I have the tiniest issue with the pacing. I feel like the climax of the series was cut a little short in order for the anime to have a strong final episode that actually ends the story. It felt a bit rushed, but it was still good. This series was fantastic and I can't praise it enough. It was a blast. From the creator of this, and the studio that made this, comes Space Patrol Luluco. This short series follows Luluco, a girl who lives in a space colonization zone with her father who works for the Space Patrol division which manages matters of alien immigrants breaking the law. Are you still with me? Luluco's dream of living a normal life comes to a halt when her father is frozen in ice and she must join the Space Patrol in hopes of saving him. By the way, this all happens in the first episode and it gets crazier from here. This series has a similar style to Panty and Stocking, but it has a girly aesthetic using a softer color scheme which matches Luluco's personality. The animation looks simple, but it's able to do a lot on a small budget. It actually uses its limitations to its advantage for comedic effect, like characters moving back and forth frantically within 2 frames. It also goes along with the fast pace of the series. Characters' movements are fast, jokes are made fast, the whole series just flies by. It has a tiny cast of characters who are varied enough to stand out in this crazy world. But Luluco is the best character because her design and personality is so adorable and clever. For example, the shooting star in her hair, as well as the transformation scene where she turns into a gun. It's awesome and I love how you can kind of see her insides in this form. This anime is dumb, but it knows it's dumb and embraces that fact to do whatever the hell it wants. It makes references to the studio and director's previous work, as well as cameos that border on just self-promotion because why not? This series is a love letter to anyone who's ever watched the show by these guys, and for me it makes the show that much better. It's oddly well written for its random nature, as love and anime expectations are a big part of its theme as it's consistently escalating from one extreme to the next. It's a cute and epic roller coaster of a ride and I loved every minute of it. I'm going to talk about both parts as if they were one whole film because they basically are. So it's really tricky to talk about Kizamonogatari because it's the beginning of the Monogatari series. You could say a prequel to the many other animes there are, but it's not meant to be watched as the beginning of the series as far as I can tell, and I personally wouldn't recommend it as an entry point. At least watch Bakemonogatari and Nisamonogatari before these films because you'll be really confused. With that out of the way, I'll quickly go over Kizamonogatari, spoiling nothing for those familiar and unfamiliar with the series. It's pretty good all round as it's primarily narrative and character focused with a tiny bit of action. It's mostly characters making conversations about situations present in the story or concepts and themes regarding just about anything from schoolwork to personal preference in girls. There is a decent amount of character development in these films. All the characters are interesting in their own way, from personality to design in clothing and motivation, topped off with really strong dialogue and witty humor that gives these characters life, not to mention good voice acting. The animation and style of these films are really strange yet uniquely original. For example, there is this reddish-orange look to the whole film, like a tint on the characters. Mainly their skin colors, but also the world, which I guess plays into the film's more obvious theme. And speaking of the world, almost all the backgrounds are in CGI just because it looks odd, I guess. Overall, I really love these two films, but I intend to return to Kizamonogatari because there is a third and final part that was released this year, so I'll cover all three films at a later date. I hope you enjoyed this video. It took a while to make, but it's finally finished. If you found this video entertaining or discovered a new favorite series or film thanks to it, leave a comment letting me know. I'd love to read it. Once again, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.